Patriots and Liberators. What was at stake in the crisis of 1909 was not simply the question of when and whether to strike against the French, but also the nature of the war that Prussia would ultimately wage against Napoleon. Frederick Wilhelm and the more conservative figures among the military leadership continued to think in terms of a traditional Kabinettskrieg, in which the key weapons were dynastic diplomacy and a well-trained, reformed regular army. By contrast, the reformers envisaged a new insurrectionary mode of warfare, involving armed masses of citizen soldiers inflamed by love of their fatherland. What an absurd idea, right? Why should we believe ourselves inferior to the Spaniards and Tyroleans? General Gebhard Leberecht von Blicher asked Frederick Wilhelm in October 1809 as he urged him to embrace the risk of war at Austria's side. We are better equipped than they. The issue lost some of its urgency after the war crisis passed, but it resurfaced in 1811. The concept of an insurrectionary war against the French never enjoyed wide support among the old officer corps. Only a minority of young officers was comfortable with an approach to warfare that risked unleashing forces beyond the control of the regular army. But beyond the army forces itself, in the educated circles of the Prussian patriot intelligentsia, there were many that found the idea exhilarating. In a poem composed in 1809 and inspired by the Austrian campaign against Napoleon, the sometime Prussian guardsman Heinrich von Kleist imagined Germans from all corners of the Old Reich rising against the French, and evoked in remarkably uncompromising language the brutality of an all-out war. Whiten with their scattered bones every hollow, every hill. From what was left by fox and crow, the hungry fish shall eat their fill. Block the Rhine with their cadavers, until plugged up by so much fleisch, it breaks its banks and surges west, to draw our borderline afresh. Perhaps the quirkiest expression of the quirkiest, probably the most based, was the Turnbewegung, or gymnast movement, founded by Friedrich Ludwig Jahn in 1811 in the Hasenheide Park in what is now the Berlin suburb of Neukölln. The age of the movement was to train young men for a coming war against the French. The objective was not to train paramilitaries, but to evolve specifically civilian forms of bodily prowess and patriotic commitment in preparation for a struggle in which the people as a whole would be pitted against the enemy. The gymnasts were not soldiers, a term that Jan despised for its mercenary associations. Sold is the German word for wage. But citizen fighters whose participation in the struggle was entirely voluntary. So in other words, these are revolutionaries. Gymnasts do not march, Jan pointed out, in the art of German gymnastics, Deutsches Turnverein. The official catechism of the early movement, because marching killed the autonomous will and was intended to degrade the individual to the mere tool of a higher authority. Instead, they walked, or trotted, or jogged, swinging their legs in a natural flowing motion, as befitted free men. The art of the gymnast, Jan wrote, is an enduring sight, for the building of fresh sociable virtues, of a sense of decency and law, and a feeling for cheerful obedience without prejudice to freedom of movement and high-spirited independence. Now, want to talk to me about siege? These things have roots in our culture. And here specifically, I give a German example from the long extinct kingdom of Prussia, but it's there. This was a reading from Iron Kingdom by Christopher Clark, The Rise and Downfall of Prussia. It's a nice, fat work, as you can see, and it covers a lot of ground. It's very complete. It has lots of footnotes. There is a liberal bias in it, but I'll leave it up to folks who have a critical brain to be able to sort things out, to read between the lines they need to read between, and to see the good and to take the good and the bad together, which is what everyone should do when they read something, really. Thanks again, and have a nice day.